Wow.
Justin Stanton, how's it going?
Hey, bud. Scott, good to see you, man. It's been a long time.
It's good to see you too. It's been, I think the last time we talked was, I did an interview with you in 2016, maybe.
Wow.
I think it was right about the time that it was either right before or right. No, I know exactly when it was. It was after Culture Vulture had come out because I remember talking about that with you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that sounds
2016.
right.
Unbelievable. Where are you coming to us from right now?
I'm in Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh my lord. Do you live there now? Or are you on tour? Well, you can't really tour, but
No, I've been playing some gigs here and there, but I've been here since March, basically since the beginning of the pandemic.
oh, so you're able to play currently? I never know because everyone's situation right now is kind of off kilter because of COVID.
Right. I mean, it's definitely not frequent by any means, but it's things here and there. Last week I was in Montreux doing some teaching with Mike Lee and Bill Lawrence. Yeah. So some things come up here and there, but I mean, mostly at home like everybody else.
Yeah, I apologize that I'm shocked. I just, when I talk to people a lot, usually I don't hear much about people doing things, a lot of traveling, which is something that I really enjoy hearing that you're doing because it's disheartening when I hear that, everything is online still, but it's nice to hear that you're actually kind of getting back to that more normal side of things.
Yeah, it's been cool. I mean, I definitely come home every time I'm like, okay, I probably got fucking COVID that time,
Yeah.
But honestly, like flying feels pretty safe. And I read somewhere, it's like flying is maybe one of the safest places that you can be just because the care that they've gone to recycling there. I should shut up because I'm a musician and not a scientist, but
it's okay.
I probably read that on Instagram too. So I'll just shut up there.
There's definitely a million things that I think genuinely that I just read once and somehow it's one of those things where like sometimes when you read something and you just kind of forget where you read it, but it sticks with you really, really strongly.
Right.
And nowadays, when we're so unsure about things, it seems like a lot of stuff is just kind of getting stuck in our brains and we don't even know if it's true.
Yeah, we're definitely on the spin cycle.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you, where do you live usually?
Well, since 2010, I lived in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, since March, I've been here in Lisbon. For the unforeseeable future, I'm here.
Oh,
I live with my girlfriend Gisela, who's Portuguese.
Gotcha. Oh, so it's a permanent situation.
I mean, what's permanent?
Well, you know what I mean. It's like you're not just visiting Portugal.
No. I was visiting quite frequently over the past, almost 2 years now.
Gotcha. Okay.
So like, I had a ticket booked to come here before a tour with Snarky Puppy, and that was in March. And when I got here, I mean, I already had the flight booked, so then the tour got canceled shortly after I got here, and then my things got canceled in the U.S. and I was like, well, and then I started picking up more work here in Europe. So,
how are you enjoying it compared to the States?
Well, I haven't been there since the shit hit the fan. So I don't know. I only know from my friends' experiences and speaking with them, but I think I'm generally thankful, very grateful to be here. And it's been nice. Super nice.
You can really only compare pre-COVID New York to, during and post-COVID Portugal.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, nothing like New York, but Lisbon's a very nice place to be and focus on music from home and use it as a base to sort of scoot around Europe and do a couple things here and there.
Gotcha. Yeah, New York is interesting right now because I'm in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm above
what neighborhood?
Bed-Stuy. I'm off the C train. Do you know Fulton Street? It's like the big street. Yeah.
Of course.
I'm on the Kingston Throop stop in Bed-Stuy. But overall, I'd say Brooklyn is pretty much I'd say it's the most normal in terms of, just feeling like New York. But when you go to Manhattan, if it's it's sometimes you'll go there on like a Saturday, and you'll be like midday Saturday, which usually, it's a bunch of people. And there are times like, do you remember like when you would live in the city, that like Sunday night feeling in New York City where it's like the streets are dead and it feels strange? I always notice that's like Sunday nights where was that day. That could happen basically any day of the week now. It's strange to just like walk down Fifth Avenue at 8:00 at night and it feels like 2 a.m. on a Sunday. It's strange.
It must be eerie.
Yeah, it's definitely, it still has that New York kind of vibe. A lot of people say it's, completely dead and it's totally different. I don't totally agree. It's definitely altered, but it's not like this totally different wasteland kind of a situation. It's just strange. That's basically the best way I can put it. Yeah. But okay, I want to go back a little bit. And to the people that are watching, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today. And actually, I had the opportunity to interview Justin back in 2016. And so I'm going to apologize. I asked him a couple of these questions back then. However, I'm going to say still, but I was especially uncomfortable on camera back then. So I'm basically kind of going to redeem myself in an interviewing sense. But I want to ask, where are you from originally?
From Elizabethton, Tennessee.
And what was it that got you into music? What was your first instrument?
Well, I started taking like a keyboard class in 5th grade, like an after school thing. Mm-hmm. So my parents bought me this like little keyboard from Walmart, and I learned how to play. Like, it was kind of hip actually. Like looking back, it was like this music teacher I had was like put together this like keyboard ensemble class after school. Mm-hmm. And he taught us, what did he teach us? Also Sprach Zarathustra, I think.
Okay.
And, or maybe Ode to Joy, one of those.
Yeah.
But it was like, he didn't teach us like in like notation. He taught us by ear and by rote. Basically, it's like in order to like teach us 8th notes, he was like, okay, play this part faster. Okay, these 2 notes go faster. It was like kind of cool. But anyway, like that was 5th grade, and then 6th grade, I started in band playing trumpet. And then in 7th grade, I started taking piano lessons. So, I mean, everything was like right around the same time, to give you a very long answer.
So is playing by ear kind of, do you prefer playing by ear? Or do you prefer reading music?
Well, from an early age, when I started reading music, I sort of prided myself on my ability to sight read. Mm-hmm. And it got me through a lot of school, especially going through a band program and like competitions and all that. There was a heavy emphasis on sight reading. And even all the way into going to grad school at North Texas, there's a huge emphasis on sight reading in the big band program. So I was able to fare well, I think, thanks to that. Mm-hmm. But it's funny, like I went through basically like 22, 23 years of life, 12 of which, playing music, 12 to 13 playing music, and then like not ever really playing by ear that much or having to rely on my ear. And then once I got out of school, the majority of my gigs were, learning music for those gigs were learning by ear. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's a muscle I developed really, really late, especially if I compare it to a lot of my peers who were more comfortable learning music by ear.
And most of the Snarky Puppy stuff was done by ear, correct?
Yeah. Although that's a interesting example, because at first Mike used to write out the tunes. Mm-hmm. So there were charts for everything, but then there was a switch. There was a point in the life of the band when Mike started to not use charts anymore, because he didn't want charts to be on stage. So he's like, just learn everything by ear. So we've done that for the past probably 12 years.
And when you went back from doing the live recorded albums to going into the studio, did that process stay the same?
Sorry, what was that?
Well, when you, because you guys were very well known for doing your live recorded albums with an audience, and then when you went back, what was it, after Silva? Was I'm trying to keep my discography in order. Yeah, when you went back for Culture Vulture and you went back into the studio, made a more traditional studio record, was the process of learning the music the same?
Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I mean, like the thing about those studio records, the last two, it's funny because like it's like, okay, let's do like an actual studio record instead of like the live in front of an audience thing. But like looking back and even during this session, I mean, we tracked live as a band.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really the overdubbing process was more of like layering. It wasn't a lot of fixing things.
Gotcha.
I mean, you have more freedom to sort of fix things and refine things for sure. But like in terms of like the feeling of the band, like people have asked me if like, okay, did you track drums and then you track guitar? And it was like, no, we were actually mostly everybody was in the same room tracking at the same time.
Does that ability to add all those, finalized details and textural things, would you prefer being able to do that over having a live audience there where you have to do everything straight to tape?
I don't know. I think there's merits in both. There's certainly like an undeniable energy of playing in front of people, and it's like palpable in the room, and it creates. I think there's a certain magic in that. But I mean, at the same time, it's like I said, when we're tracking in the studio, we're playing basically for each other. We're all in the room, and you want to do well, and you want to add to that energy in the room, and you want to create something good. So I think there's merits in both. I mean, I love being in the studio, and part of being at home too is like being able to sit and work and add things. Like if somebody sends me a song to record on, like just be able to sit in that and like sort of experiment with layers. I love that, but I also love playing for people. And I think like most musicians, I miss that right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you doing a lot of remote tracking?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, here and there. Doing
what do you use
stuff?
What do you use to record? What DAW?
I use Logic. I mean, I'm definitely not the guy to talk to about like home studio setup, because basically like all my things are in New York. So I've sort of had to adapt since I've been here, but I have a piano here and a MIDI controller, and I've never been a guy that's been into soft synths, but I have gotten into soft synths since I've been here because that's my instrument for keyboards. So, and I have like a little SSL 2-channel thing, and yeah, it's modest, but it's okay.
Well, SSL is a fantastic company. My roommate is huge into audio engineering, and he loves SSL. So I don't know that much about the company itself, all except from what he knows, and he's much more knowledgeable than me on that. But he always talks highly of SSL. So that's it. I mean, it's not that like you need a whole lot, because it's like it really just comes down to the merit of the music, and if you can portray that, it doesn't you don't need a whole fancy setup. Because like I was talking about this yesterday, I had a show with a guy named Jeff Countryman, he's a producer and an audio engineer, and he works for Saturday Night Live. And we were having a conversation about how
I saw that. Does he make the DI boxes? Is that the same Countryman?
I don't think so. But
okay. Maybe not.
No. You might. I'm making a face because you might be right. That's the thing.
I saw his last name, and every time I just think about it. Every time I play at Rockwood, they have these DI boxes, and they say Countryman on them. And I saw his name. I was like, I've never seen that name anywhere but on a DI box.
I don't think so, unless my research for him was really bad, which it totally could have been, because I have not heard anything. But next time I talk to him, I'll ask him. But yeah, we were just talking about that subject of like, people talk about like you need all this fancy stuff. It's just like it really just comes down to the music that you're recording and not the whole fancy setup behind it. But
I don't know. Everybody's got different things, and when you're putting together something, it's like a home studio system, and unless you're loaded, it's like you're not going to like go out and buy top of the line everything. So I've basically like sort of been building up piece by piece as things come along. The SSL thing is like it's sort of like an affordable option. It's not like when you think SSL, you think like the big mixing boards in like in a real studio. This is like a 2-channel sort of like around the same price as like a Focusrite Scarlett or something.
Gotcha.
Definitely like if you're using like an Apollo, like UAD, like or something, like you'd definitely be in a better place probably. But I mean, I agree. Like for me, I think it's good, and I haven't had anyone complain, but I've also done sessions for people where they've asked me what my gear is at home, and I've told them, and they're like, we're going to book you some studio time and you can go in.
Well, there's a lot of people who really, there is, I mean, sometimes I think that it's, there's merit to the idea of like, we want this to sound really good, but I think sometimes people just kind of have like an arrogance about audio technology where it's like, oh, you got to do it this way. I think I've said this a bunch publicly, but it's just sometimes there's people who say it because they have a real reason, and sometimes people just kind of have they almost think it like they're better than you for not using this certain technology. Which
well, certainly the opposite is the case too. I mean, I talked to Nick Hart about this a lot, engineer I work with quite a bit, and what was that?
That was someone outside my house. There is, it's the thing is when you do pre-recorded stuff, you can cut stuff out. But when you're going live, no matter how well I sound treat this room, because I'm working on a low budget, there's still it's New York City. You're gonna get those like random screams, explosions that you don't know if it's like a car backfiring, that kind of stuff,
I was just talking to Moz earlier, just before I called you, and we're doing the interview, and he lives in Flatbush.
Gotcha.
There's sirens going off in the background, and we were talking about his birthday is on election day.
Oh wow!
So he's talking about, well, we'll see, and then so we were talking about the siren was going off in the background. I was like, well, how ominous.
It's gonna be. I mean, whenever there's any big event in New York, it's always insane. You've lived here so long, that. But it's especially these days. It's like people are just kind of doing kind of what they want, which is cool. It's cool that people are just kind of like. I mean, for like the 4th of July, all of New York City was just like fireworks, just like 24/7. Which I think to people who don't live here might be annoying, but it's one of those things where you just kind of shrug your shoulders and you go, it's New York. It's how it is.
I heard it was like pretty crazy with the fireworks.
It was. There was right outside my house. People were going like, I would say 3 hours nonstop, and I mean literally like the longest gap was 15 seconds. Crazy stuff. Like I don't know where the budget to have all these fireworks comes from, and I don't really know any other city where that is kind of the norm. But
those people can't go to the bar. They're saving a lot of money.
That's exactly it. Because especially in New York, you go to a bar and it's like, I'll have a beer. It's like, oh, it's $15. What? But you could spend. I had a buddy. We went to a bar once, and my idea of going to a bar is like 2 beers and maybe some food. So like $20 at like a cheap bar, $25. And he was like, oh yeah, I just spent $80 on just drinks, and that blows my mind. And he had like 4. And I guess maybe I'm just out of that kind of scene. But in New York, it's unbelievable that you can drop bans on a couple alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, it's yeah.
And now
I don't miss that.
No, I mean I don't blame you. And now they're probably going to all go out of business, unfortunately, which is it's a shame.
Well, I hope not. We'll see.
Let's hope. Hopefully, the next time you come back to New York, it'll be a little how you remember it.
Yeah.
But here, so now we went past all of the kind of stuff that I had a chance to ask you before. And since we've talked, you released your debut record, Secret Place.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask, because I was listening to it, and I would say, what would you say was your strongest inspiration for the sound of that record?
Well, I think like a lot of debut records, the focus isn't really so much on being focused on a theme, but it's like, okay, I'm going to offer up everything that I have, kind of like sort of give an array of my influences. So it's really hard to say like, okay, this is the strongest influence for the record, but there's certainly a couple that I could point out that were big influences. I mean, certainly like the work of Wendy Carlos. It's a huge, and Stevie Wonder as well, like in terms of like the performance and writing and sound design on synthesizers.
Mm-hmm. I noticed a lot of synth work on your record.
Well, you should have, because it's a keyboard record. It's keyboards and drums. That's about it. So a lot of synth work for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Stevie Wonder, did you get a chance to hear any of his new music?
No.
He came out with it kind of flew under the radar, which surprised me. The only reason I found out was that I was just scrolling through YouTube News, and there's just a little thing that was like a little Vice or something about Stevie Wonder. He released 2 songs about 2 weeks ago, and they're like incredible. And apparently he hasn't released music in 6 years, but you're saying inspiration from Stevie. I know
I heard nothing about that.
Yeah, and it had Rhapsody and YBN Corday, the rapper.
Yeah.
He's just Corday now because like the YBN group disbanded, but and Busta Rhymes on it. It's a lineup, and it somehow flew under the radar. I just mentioned that because you're talking about your inspiration and from Stevie. I was also going to ask how much deliberation went into your choices for the musicians that you had on the record.
Not a lot. Basically, like I said, most of the record's keyboards, so it's me. So if I'm deliberating that, I might as well not make the record. But there's 2 guys that I'm very close with musically and as friends that I was like, if I'm making a record, they have to be involved, and there's no way around it. And that's Nick, the engineer, and Robert Seawright, Spud.
Gotcha.
It's like I have to have Spud and I have to have Nick. So I basically made the record with those 2 guys, and everyone else whose contributions are on there that are super important. The vocalists, Melanie Watson, Mike Maher, and Dominica Fossati. Also, Mark Lettieri's playing guitar on the track. I think that's it. But yeah, I mean, the bulk of the tracking process happened with Nick and Spud, and Nick especially, because Nick edited, engineered, mixed, and basically co-produced the record with me, essentially.
How long was the process of making the record?
Well, we started in Omaha, Nebraska. We tracked for 9 days, me and Spud and Nick. And then after that, we edited and mixed, me and Nick, for a while. I remember around that time, we were both Nick was so busy. I think he was working on like 7 projects at once. So really the difficult thing was scheduling mix sessions. Because then there was first there was the overdubbing process with like tying up loose ends, and then we started mixing and then mastering. But I think the whole process, I put that out in May of 2019. I'd say a year and a half. I'd say from the time I put the record out to the time I began, because I think I started tracking in October of 2018.
Gotcha. I wanted to also ask you about, because I knew I had heard your record when it came out, but something that I hadn't heard until preparing for today was your Miniatures album. I wanted to ask about that, because I was like, this is a hefty ass track listing, 35 songs. That's incredible. You don't see records with 35 songs on it. How did that album come about?
I'm glad you asked. Years and years ago, I don't know how I found out about this collection of songs, but I think I might have been when I first moved to New York, and I was like saying yes to every single gig that someone asked me to do. And a friend of mine at the time, Brad Whiteley, he's a keyboard player, also lives in Brooklyn. he was playing a church gig, but like playing at a Catholic church, playing like Catholic mass kind of stuff. And he asked me to sub for him. It was like 4 services on Sunday in the Bronx. I had to be up there at like 7:30 in the morning from like the heart of Brooklyn, like in Kensington. I had to leave at like fucking 5:30 in the morning or something. And I'd go up there, and I think I must have bought the book for that, because I was like, I need some like sort of easier organ pieces to play, just as like prelude music. But years and years go by, and then I found this book, I think maybe in my storage unit. I was like, man, I'm gonna check this stuff out again. And I was at home, and when the last place I lived in New York was with my friend Michelle Willis, and she has a pump organ at home, like a harmonium. You familiar with these instruments?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like sitting at this pump organ playing these songs. I'm like, this shit is so beautiful. And so I like played through a couple, and I was like, man, it'd be cool to record these. But I didn't really know how. And I was thinking, man, maybe I could record them on this organ thing. And then fast forward to March, and I'm over here, and I'm like, it was like basically like my first big quarantine project.
Gotcha.
It's like, so I didn't bring the book with me, but Michelle photocopied the whole book for me and sent it to me via email.
That's a loyal ass friend.
She's amazing, and she's also putting out a record very soon too. So anyway, that was also my chance to sort of dive into this soft synth world, and I was using this collection of synths made by Arturia, and it's like emulations of a bunch of vintage digital and analog synthesizers. So I was like, okay, I want to like try to play through these and try to craft a sound that like really supports each composition. And also like in the book, there's listings for stops, like organ stops. Yeah. So it was a chance to also like research organ stops and like, okay, this means this, because it's like sort of antiquated terms and it's like very organ specific. So you have to look them up and see, okay, this means like clarinet, or this means bassoon, or this means viola. And so, okay, now how can I sort of satisfy that in synth terms? So I was like, okay, there's 35 of these things. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to do all 35 of them. And I did. Some I like more than others, but it was a very rewarding process. And it was just sort of the thing. I was like, you know what, I'm going to just do this and I'm going to put it out and see what happens. No pressure or anything, but it's out.
And so did you engineered it yourself?
I had help with Nick from that. I did most of the work myself, and then I sent it to Nick to sort of fine tune it. And then we actually, Nick's not a mastering engineer, but we mastered it together.
Mastering, in just my opinion, isn't like, because when I produce music, I don't have the budget to pay someone to master it usually, so I always just do a master myself. And that process, geez, it's one of those things that until you try to do it, you don't really appreciate the work that goes into it, because I can't even make it sound even a quarter as good as is people who really do it. And it's so difficult. It's an incredible process, and it's an underrated process that I don't think, like, I know a lot of musicians don't discuss, everyone talks about how you're producing it, how you're engineering it, but the mastering process is one of those things that's like, I've learned to have so much respect for it. But I think it sounded fantastic when I was listening to the record. So congratulations, you guys did a killing job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny talking to Nick about mastering, because he's like, I'm not a mastering. He's like very clear, I'm not a mastering engineer. He's like, to him, I think it's sort of the dark arts of it. He's like, I don't know what those guys do. So like we started messing around with some basic mastering tools. I even through the very basic process that we did for mastering, I don't feel like I still have any level of appreciation for what's happening there, other than like the attempt, especially on 35 tracks, to bring a consistency in sound and a general contour throughout the entirety of that record. It's difficult.
Yeah, it's crazy. And audio engineers, like you said, Nick was, he was saying that he's not a mastering engineer. Every audio engineer I know, that's their thing. They're like, oh, I'm terrible at it. I don't know anything about it. and then they play me their mastering, and I'm like, this sounds fantastic. What are you talking about? And they're like, oh no, this doesn't sound good. And then in this range, it's bad. And I'm sitting there like, I can't hear the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the way our disciplines, respective disciplines, affect our ears and what we're able to hear and listen for. Because there were countless times in doing the record with Nick, the first record, Secret Place, we'd be sitting together and he would A/B something for me. I was like, Nick, I really can't tell a difference between the two. But then there's other times when I'm like, dude, you can't hear that note, or like, you can't hear that one thing. He'd be like, well, I can't hear it. But I mean, that just happens. That's why it's so good to have another voice in the room. It's like, if there's anything that's like about doing something yourself, is like, you don't have that check. You don't have like the other voice of reason, whether it's a producer or an engineer or an editor or even another musician. It's so good to have somebody else say, hey, either it's okay, we can move on. Because that's another danger about like tracking by yourself, is like, I'll do 100 takes of something if I'm by myself. If I'm in the studio, it sort of brings your focus in and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get this right the first time, because otherwise I'm wasting people's time.
Have you ever noticed that sometimes when you do something as many times as you want, you're almost less satisfied with the final product than sometimes when you're forced to do it, and you just have to get used to the take that you did. You almost
100%.
enjoy it more sometimes, because instead of looking for that perfect track and trying to achieve it, you almost find that you think that this track that you did quickly is perfect in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because you have to.
Yeah, totally. What they say about diminishing returns. I think when that happens, when you've peaked.
Yep. And
sometimes that's hard when no one else is in the room. You're like, get a little better.
Absolutely. It can always, every creative endeavor, but audio and music in general is just so subjective. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell yourself that. It's like I can tell myself that all day, but I'm still going to look at all the stuff I do subjectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question in the comments that I want to read you. Carl asks, what was it like playing with Corey Wong?
When did I play with Corey Wong?
Carl, did he not play with Corey Wong? Oh no, Carl.
No, because the time I'm thinking of, I went and heard him play with his band at Brooklyn Bowl, but I don't know if we ever. Honestly, I don't think we played together.
Carl, what are you doing? You're making me look bad.
No, he might be making me look bad.
No, I mean, I just appreciate any time anyone asks a question, because I always feel like I'm running on fumes.
I will say that, Corey's a fantastic guitar player. And actually, I recorded on a track with him. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's what he's talking about.
That might be it.
We recorded together on Becca Stevens' record.
Gotcha.
Record, Wonderblown. Maybe that's what he's talking about. I was trying. When did we play together? But we recorded on the same track. That was cool.
Yeah. Speaking of Becca, I go to the new school, which was her old college, and I didn't know that until I got there. When I went to college, it was a year after Family Dinner 2 came out. And she's the first track on that. And I just remember being so amazed, because I had no clue that she went to school there. And I was just like starstruck, because one of my teachers was like, when people come into my class, like Robert Glasper, Becca Stevens, I was like, what? I was like, this is the girl that I'm like listening to and, at home all the time. I was absolutely starstruck. She's incredible, Becca.
Yeah. Yeah. Becca's fantastic.
And speaking of Family Dinner, I have a question about that. I wanted to ask, what was your favorite collaboration on either of the Family Dinner records?
Well, I wasn't on the first one.
Wait a minute. You weren't on the first one?
I wasn't on the first one.
Okay, wait a minute. How did I not know that? I'm like, I've been like a Snarky Puppy super fan. I can't believe I messed that up.
No, it's okay. A lot of people, it's just assume. I was in the band, but I was touring with another person around that time. It was like sort of like my first other gig, like sort of pop gig.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing with this artist from New Zealand named Jen Wigmore,
Mm-hmm.
and she was doing quite a bit of touring. I remember we were in Europe and a tour got extended,
Mm-hmm.
and it was during the family dinner session.
Gotcha.
And I ended up missing that session, which was tragic, obviously, because it was the first Grammy that the band won. I was like, son of a bitch.
The one time you're not there.
So yeah, I wasn't on that one.
Well, I apologize for not keeping my shit straight.
No. Of course, I'm not offended. There's a lot of us, but on family dinner too. Certainly, Becca's. And I think I can speak for the other guys too. That family dinner one too was like, it's just such a whirlwind. Like even more than like any of the like live stuff. Even with Silva, I feel like with the family dinner stuff, it's like such a freaking whirlwind of like getting shit together.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved playing Lauren Bulla's song "Sing to the Moon."
Yes,
that was a cool arrangement. I actually also involved my ex-roommate now, Michelle. She was playing pump organ on that. Her pump organ she played on.
There you go. It ties it all together.
Yeah, and I did double duty on that track. We had like a little keyboard trade between me and Corey and Sean and Bill, which was cool. And then at the very end, I like run across the room and play trumpet. So that was like sort of fun to do that. And plus, that song is epic as shit too. There's so much good shit on that record too, man. It's like, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say I was fortunate enough. I didn't get to see the taping, but I got to come to one of the film premieres in, I think it was like Chelsea or the West Village or something like that. It was some art theater, and being able to hear it, it was presented. I remember it was being marketed as in like 4K surround sound, and being able to hear that record, because I had heard, I think up until that point you guys had released like 2 songs. I think it was I Asked and Melina Malero had come out as singles, and I remember just hearing that whole album in that, like, it was like 6-point sound throughout the screen. It was unbelievable. It was in 4K. That was one of those experiences that I'll never forget, because getting to hear that, knowing that it was coming live, but hearing that in that setting was like watching it as a live show, and it was incredible. And that record has stuck with me forever as one of my favorite Snarky Puppy records. But sorry,
cool.
what were you gonna say? I cut you off by mistake.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just getting ready to go on and on, because now I hadn't thought about that in years. So it's like hard to like, hey, remember that time you did this, or remember playing with Corey Wong? I'm like, shit, you got it. 2020's been a long year, man.
Yeah, I try to. I'm still very new to the whole live interview thing, so I apologize if I'm jumping. No. If I'm jumping around all the time.
Okay.
But
I was mainly speaking to that question from Carl.
Carl's always here. Carl and Ian are like the 2 guys who are always watching the stream. So major shout out to them. Sorry, continue.
But actually, I remember Becca's thing too. I remember that specifically too. With there was I Asked. There were 2 songs. There was I Asked and Be Still. And
was Be Still a bonus track? I think it was on the special edition of that record.
Okay.
I think there's 2 tracks that came out after on an extended edition.
You're right. Yeah. Be Still, I love that song.
That's a fantastic
really song. But I remember I was familiar with Becca's music. I love Becca's music. In fact, I really have a soft spot for the first record, T by C. So awesome. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking like, oh, wow, she's like dealing with harmony in such a specific way, such a unique way. And it really blew my mind, like really sort of changed my perspective on harmony. But then like having to play her song, that was the first time I had a chance to play her songs. And rhythmically too, it's like there's such a feeling in the music that, okay, the phrasing really goes with the vocal. Then nothing is sort of like built in as a construct, like a sort of artificial construct, or it's like we're tied into a meter. It's like these things are very fluid and they're based on the vocal. And I thought that was super cool. But as a result, I was like, being unfamiliar with someone's style, like on that level of having to perform. You can listen to it as one thing, as sort of passively, but once you're taking an active role in the music making process of someone's music, it's like, wow, this shit's super deep. And I remember her stuff being a specific challenge, but very rewarding. And then I ended up playing a handful of gigs with her band later on, actually last year, at the beginning of this year, actually. We played in Ottawa, I think. But yeah, man, really like her music. And Salif Keita's tune was super nice. Really, everybody brought different stuff. Of course, Jacob, and yeah, super cool stuff.
Jacob's really done so much. It's incredible the amount of stuff that I see him coming out with on a regular basis. It's his work ethic is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question from my fantastic friend Sean, my best friend, my man here. He and I really got into Snarky Puppy back in high school together. It was like our joint thing. He asked, what of the Snarky Puppy albums that you've played on are your favorites, or which are your favorites?
Wow. I mean, I really like the last two that we've done, for sure. I mean, we always have a good time, but like I said, there's something about being in the studio and it not being in this live sort of setting, and feels a bit more relaxed. And as a keyboard player, you can sort of take a deeper dive into like the sound design and getting things really sounding right. Whereas in the live setting, maybe there's like a little bit more pressure to just like perform the parts and sort of satisfy that. And then like, if we want to refine anything, it's sort of like in the editing and post-production process. But that being said, I mean, like We Like It Here was super fun. Obviously, like a lot of memorable things happened around that. And yeah, I mean, first time recording with Larnell, which was insane. I mean, I'm sure you know that story.
I think we talked about it in our first interview in 2016. I think if I remember correctly, honestly, I haven't watched it because watching myself in the past is is like nails on a chalkboard to me, having to see myself on camera back then. So I haven't watched it in a while, but I think I split that interview into two, and I think that was the story that was like the cliffhanger into the part two.
Yeah.
It was my attempt at, getting people over to the second, which I think cool. I think part two, ironically, I think is the most popular of that interview.
Oh, okay.
And it's still the most.
Then we were probably talking about Larnell.
It's
like the first record you're talking all about yourself, and then the second part you're talking about Larnell.
No, I don't think that's it. But I think the second part was like I think my editing was a little bit cleaner. I think back in the first one, I think I was kind of sloppy, so I think people caught on to the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing. But it's still the most popular music related thing that I've put out. So I thank you for that so much.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I was gonna say it's interesting now that they've been putting the Tell Your Friends out remixed. Nick did the remixes for that. That was also a really fun session. Because at that point, it was the first time of us doing that sort of model of the live in studio thing, and no one knew what the fuck we were doing. So talk about like a nervous energy there was for sure. But like thinking back, that was 11 years ago, that headspace that we were all in, how much things have changed and how much we've all learned since then. But each session is fun really in its own way and have super bright moments and unique challenges. And I know that's a generic answer, but it really is true.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me see. Check the comments. Ian asks, where does the name Snarky Puppy come from? Ian, if you go back on my YouTube channel, you can, I think Justin has mentioned that in the last one, and also there's a bunch of clips that talk about that.
And every interview about Snarky Puppy ever.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you for answering that for me.
No, it's okay. I had a feeling. I was like, that seems like something I would have asked, and I probably did. Okay, I got one more question for you, just because this is something I genuinely am interested in. I like to hear people's perspectives on this. What artists would you say that are modern right now, underground artists that you think are underrated? And also on the contrasting point, what really popular modern artists do you also think to some people are underrated?
Let's see. One second. Let me look here because there's a couple things that I've been checking out that I really like. You know, I've told people that like my first record, and in turn, you know, you asked me earlier about strong influences for my record, and although I couldn't say from a musical sense that this one thing would influence the sound of the entire record, but I would say conceptually that a record that influenced it was Mark Ronson's record, Uptown Special.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic album.
It's so good. And you know, you're not going to listen to Uptown Special and be like, oh, wow, yeah, I see where Justin got his shit. But like the breadth of like influences and to me, it's like a producer's record. It's like a calling card. It's like saying, I feel comfortable doing these things and I feel at home in these styles and I want to show my versatility. And it's like, when I did my first record, it's like, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. That's what I want my first record effort to be, is like, I'm going to write something that's like this. I'm going to write something like this, and do things in a variety of styles and sort of showcase myself in that way. So in terms of like a mainstream artist, I have a great amount of respect for him. Mm-hmm. In terms of newer artists, I really like Ethan Gruska. I think that's how you say his name. Gruska. Mm-hmm. You checked him out?
I have not, but I know the name.
Beautiful music. And I'm sure in interviews that he's done, a fun fact about him that I'm sure he's sick of divulging is that he is the grandson of John Williams.
Really? Okay, I'm like, you want to talk about some of my, like, something I can nerd out about? John Williams is that guy. Yeah. Like, I am the world's like biggest John Williams fan.
Man.
He is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you. But I mean, you're not going to listen to his grandson's music and be like, oh, okay, I hear the influence, but
I hear the Harry Potter theme song in this.
Right. You're not going to hear that, but it's super beautiful writing and lyrics and very understated in a way. And it's very intimate. I really like his music. I really like, my girlfriend Gisela showed me this artist. I hope I pronounced her name right. Kaja Bonet.
That I do not know that name.
Super beautiful music, really great voice, and the production on a lot of the stuff I've heard is very like sort of harkens back to sort of Delphonics, sort of orchestral R&B sort of vibe. Really, really beautiful. Who else? You know, I've always been a fan of this band in Brooklyn called the Netherlands. It's sort of like a rock band, mm-hmm. Sort of like not a metal band per se, but sort of like proggy metal, super badass. Bob Lanzetti showed me that.
Do you miss getting to go out to see like live shows on that, like the New York City music scene?
Oh
like,
man,
bar crawling and all that.
It's the thing I miss the most about
what were your
New York.
Well, I always ask people this. Where were your favorite spots to go? I'm not talking about like giant venues. I'm talking just like going to see a band on like a Friday night in the city.
I mean, there were so many things that I saw. I mean, like, you know, a place like Rockwood would be a default, or like going to, like, if you want to see jazz, like going to Smalls and hanging or something like that. But like I remember so many shows that I remember seeing were like, seemed like pop-up shows or loft shows, like going to see something in Bushwick or like, yeah. Man, interviews. I forgot how to do interviews. It's like I should be ready to rock with these questions. I'm like, fuck, I don't know.
No, because it's like, I mean, yes, this is technically like an interview type thing, but I always want it to be like very casual, not just like bam, 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 bam. Here's the perfect answer. Here's the perfect question. You know, very casual conversation. So I appreciate you even joining us. Means a ton.
Nah, it's cool.
Talking about clubs, I have I love Rockwood. It's a fantastic place, and my roommate used to play there all the time. He subs for the group Aberdeen, and I have a bad. The one thing about Rockwood is the only time I played there once, and I had such a terrifying experience because I played a gig where my friend called me, and he says, "Hey, I'm coming to the city tomorrow. We need a drummer." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And he goes, "I don't have, I have the chords. That's it, and like 2 voice recordings. But it's like we're playing an hour of music, and 2 voice recordings is like a couple songs, which it's not his fault at all. He was just saying, this is what I have, just so you know. Would you like to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And so I played a show where I didn't know anything. I walked in, I had heard one song, and it was in what are the 3 stages at Rockwood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think I was at I think I was stage 2, whatever the bar is where the drums are on the floor. And I was on the floor, basically in the audience, watching the singer playing to music that I had never heard before, and just hoping that I got it right. And it was and so now, like, whenever I walk by Rockwood, I get chills because I was so embarrassed, hoping that people would like catch on to the fact that I obviously did not have a effing clue about what I was doing. But Rockwood's such a fantastic venue, and another place that I used to like to go all the time was 55 Bar. Did you ever go there?
Oh yeah, love 50. Yeah, see, that's an example. That's like, in fact, that's the last gig I played in New York.
Really?
Because I left. Let's see. I remember it was like the week. The last thing that I did in the States was I went to my buddy Jay's wedding. Jay Jennings. He got married in March. We flew down to Texas to go to where he's from. He and his wife, and we flew down. But before that, it was like, I think I flew down on Friday, but Thursday I had a gig at 55 Bar with Zach Brock. That was the last place I played. I fucking love 55 Bar so much.
55 is the coolest also because like it's one of those places where really high level people come in, but you don't feel like you got robbed afterward. Like you go in and you like a lot of the places you go in and you end up losing like $100, which I mean for great music is worth it, but sometimes you're like, damn, I feel like the musicians didn't get any of this. But the 55 Bar you go in, it's like what, like a $15 cover most of the time. You spend like $20 on drinks. It's a fantastic place for like, especially a college kid on a budget like myself, to get to go see incredible artists. I think the first one I saw there was it's Keith Carlock, and I can't remember the guitarist, but
Wayne Krantz.
It was Keith, Wayne Krantz, and your buddy Mike League was on bass actually.
Oh, it was Mike. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember
I was gonna say probably Tim, but
no, I think I think Mike was subbing because I think it was when I first got tickets, he wasn't on the bill if I remember correctly, and then he came in later because I remember my friends and I were standing, that back hallway.
Yeah.
And it was me and my buddy, and then Bob Lanzetti actually was right behind us chilling. I felt bad. I was like, he's coming here to see his friend, and he's like stuck in this back hallway. But I just remember Mike was like reading like a motherfucker. Like he was staring at that sheet music. I was just waiting. I was like, there's no way he's not gonna like totally screw this shit up, because it's like I can barely follow this music, and he was just killing it. It was an incredible show. And again, it was like $20. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen. It was like $20.
Awesome. Yeah, that place has mojo for sure.
Absolutely. And what's that place up near Williamsburg? Huge place. I can't think of the name of it now, but another place would be like the Bitter End too, in the Village. That's a fantastic venue. Have you ever gone to any of the Monday night? They do like a jam session on Monday night at Bitter End.
No, I never went to that.
Bitter End's a cool ass place. I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes they're a little difficult to work with, but they do a Monday night jam and the musicians there are absolutely incredible. So you go, you drink, you play a tune. Basically, you go and you drink and you hang out with your buddies and listen to some music. Fantastic house band though. Just to go to the house band, and one time I went there and actually we were chilling at this jam session, and we're like, we see all these like really good looking people come in, and we're like, these people look famous. My buddy goes, dude, that's Bella Hadid right behind us. we're chilling at this dive bar at a basically like a funk jam session, and Bella Hadid's there. And then my buddy goes, "Hey, that's the guy from the Dudesons," and it's freaking Diplo, the producer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like one of those things. That was one of those New York experiences where I'm like, I'm in a dingy bar at 1:30 in the morning in the West Village or in Washington Square Park area, and Diplo and Bella Hadid are hanging out. It's one of those like New York things. I hope that comes back, that kind of vibe.
Yeah, well, if it comes back anywhere, it'll be there first. Yeah, it's just that's what it's built on. Whether you're seeing music or seeing comedy, or being in the West Village and going to the Comedy Cellar and like.
I never got a chance to go there.
Yeah, one of the last times I went, I remember, of course, can't really speak his name anymore.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
So Louis C.K. and Jon Stewart
in the same freaking night.
Well, it's funny. They Maz and I went to the Comedy Cellar and they both did bits that set before the ones we got tickets for. Of course, she didn't know. They just showed up. But they came upstairs. Yeah. We were waiting at the bar upstairs to go in, and we were sitting there, and I saw Louis' face on the TV behind the bar, and I was just like, oh, well, it must be like some old footage. And then like 5 minutes later, we're sitting at a table, and they like walked up from the back, like a back staircase in the bar, him and Jon Stewart, and I was like, holy shit. Yeah. It's New York. I mean, and of course in the music world, it's like, going to Zinc Bar is another great place too.
I've never been there, but I know a bunch of friends have played there and go there all the time.
Always a good hang. I remember like going there and like Roy showing up, and one of the last times I went there, it was like, I think it was like around Winter Jazz Fest. It was like January, February, like when New York is just at its worst weather-wise, but like the hang was so deep, like the vibe, crazy there.
The vibe is sometimes cool when you're in New York and it's like miserable outside, and going into one of those places, like sometimes when it's, it's nice out, it makes it better. But sometimes when it's like miserable to get there and you're freezing cold and you finally get to a place like that, it almost enhances it in a way.
Yeah. I had to say another great place though that I missed too is New Blue. The thing that Ray Angry was doing there on, I think, Monday nights was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
A couple buddies playing at that regularly and stopping by, like that hang was super deep too. So yeah. I mean, the more I think about it, I'm like, fuck, New York, man, miss it.
Well, I hope you get a chance to come back soon, and I hope it's not miserable when you do. But I could go on talking about New York City places forever, but I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. I hope I didn't keep you too late. What time is it there?
Oh, no, it's 10.
Oh, okay. Well,
exciting Friday night. I spent my Friday night with you.
Thank you. I could not have had a better Friday night.
Awesome.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it so much. Stay safe. I hope you get a chance to come back to the city sometime and enjoy its splendors, but enjoy it, Portugal. And to everyone who is watching, thank you so much. You can check this replay up on YouTube, or you can hear the audio-only version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, all that stuff. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.